Okay, update on Joust. Joust has been emptied. Joust has been cleaned as best as I pretty much could, which is basically just a damp rag. On the inside, I did sand the bottom with 100 grit sandpaper. Obviously, you can see there's still a lot of stains from liquid that got inside of it. The nastiest thing was the plastic monitor surround. Right? Two plastic monitor surrounds. This one here is a big flat piece that goes around the opening, and then the one that has an angle that the monitor pokes through is a separate piece. Those were the filthiest arcade parts I've cleaned, and that's including two Japanese arcade cabinets that I cleaned. Um, this piece here I sprayed with 409 and then had a toothbrush and went over it horizontally, vertically, the whole outer, and the amount of just nasty brown water that came off it was just unbelievable. I flipped it over and did the same on the back. Just nasty. And then I dried it off with an old towel and still saw dirt on it. So I took some simple green, did the whole thing again, and another ton of brown yuck came off of it. After that, it was pretty clean. So same thing with the monitor bezel that didn't look near as dirty as this piece because this had a ton of stuff spilled on it, especially on that side, whereas the monitor just had a few trails where some went down, but it had so much soot from the electrostatic of the tube that it was really filthy nasty too. So I also cleaned these stainless steel cocktail glass clips, I guess you'd call them, because that's what they are, even though they're way larger than a Midway arcade cabinet, obviously. And reprinted some of the instruction cards. Cleaned up the glass. Yes, it's scratched, but I think it's good enough. I don't think it's all that terrible. Worth buying another custom cut piece. So that got me there. Next was the monitor. The monitor was. I forgot to look it up again. There was a post on the Clav forums from, I believe, username Mecca, who had a post that I found that actually identified the chassis. It's a Wells Gardner. I want to say K7300. Basically, his post said that Wells Gardner had these when they were phasing their in-house production out and having other companies make chassis for them, and that it is supposedly about 99% the same schematic as the HAP Vision Pro that came a bit later. And that made perfect sense to me because in my other videos I was saying it looks a lot like my HAP Vision Pro. And probably not going to be able to see it, but there is a barcode tag down there and a barcode tag down here that start with WG. This one, 8019910, is the tube, and the chassis is marked 20 at the end. So I'm thinking those are the part numbers for those two pieces, making it a Wells Gardner. And then down here, I can't really see through the camera, but there's a 5 something something, and I think that's what I eventually found that chassis on Clav under. So that was the mystery of the chassis, and I did find a schematic online, so I have a schematic for it, which is good. The next thing I did, which I don't know, questionable or not, I had the HAP Vision Pro frame from the monitor that's in my Double Dragon, because the Double Dragon uses a special frame so that the monitor can be rotated. So this chassis and tube was in the original 4900 monitor frame that came with the cabinet when it was originally made. The serial number sticker matches the serial number of the cabinet. So some may say, well, by replanting this to another chassis, it's less original, but as far as I'm concerned, with this monitor, it already was not original, so I don't think it's a big deal. I did not throw away the chassis. I have saved it where I had this one separated into the two edge pieces and the chassis plate, so that if I sell the cocktail cabinet, that frame will go with it. So if somebody wants to buy a 4900 tube and chassis and put it in the original frame and put it in there, that'll make it more original. But for now, this Hap Vision Pro has the exact same screw lineups because it used this exact same plastic mounting frame that this chassis does. So I still saw because this covers up a section of the frame, this frame that I had in my Vision Pro, it's clean right around where the ears of this plastic tab is, right around this plastic tab, so I knew it was the exact same frame as what this monitor probably came with the exception that this one in there you can see says Vision Pro, and this one probably had some kind of Wells Gardner decal on it. But I've now got 4 screws in the proper places holding this thing firm to the chassis plate. I've got these ground wires. There's this one here, and there's another one on the other side that are mounted there. So the screw touches this ground strap and then goes through this frame. So it is now grounded properly. It is now screwed in 4 places with the proper screws, so it is not going to go anywhere. It is not held in with sticky tape. So that involved me taking the tube off of the 4900 frame, putting it into this Vision Pro frame, putting it into the cabinet, loosening the 4 bolts that hold the monitor to the frame, so I can adjust the frame so that these mounting slots in this frame line up with the mounting positions in the cabinet, which are there and there on each side. And you can even see the wood is lighter colored where metal has been covering it, protecting it from the elements, unlike the wood around it with the original 4900 frame. So it fits in there good. It lines up centered. The other thing I did was clean this tube. I don't wash tubes anymore with water just because the Aquadag that provides x-ray protection and grounding for the tube, some of Aquadag is water soluble, so if you wash it, it might come off. I took a rag, a wet paper towel, and went over it here, and it doesn't look like it came off, so I probably would have been fine spraying the tube down. But I just got a soft, fluffy brush and brushed everything I could reach with the brush, and then used some air to blow all the dust off, and the tube ended up looking just fine. So it's not mint out of the box. It's still got some dirt and grime on it, but all of the loose stuff has been knocked off. And then the chassis I did spray with Simple Green, leave it for a few minutes, and then spray it down with a hose, and I've left it for a week now, and I've got it all plugged back in. Ground wires, a wire that goes from the tube to the neck. I have the yoke wires plugged in, and I have the anode plugged in, so it's ready to power back on again. I'm not in a big hurry to do that because I have to do stuff to the inside of the cabinet, and when you put that thing back in the cabinet, it takes up a lot of room. So, next step, I'm working on some next steps. Next steps for me are taking the cheap route as opposed to the buying everything original that I can from wherever I can find original Joust cocktail parts, which is going to be crazy expensive, tough to find, and take a while. I've said before, I have a J-Rock multi-Williams board, which will play Joust, can be set to boot up into Joust, so you won't even know that it's not a real board set, unless you're, I don't know, smarter than me, which I guess that's pretty much everybody, but it plays great, and it's not a cheap 60-in-1, it's an FPGA implementation, and if you don't know anything about that, look up the J-Rock multi-Williams, that's J-R-O-K. So, in order to do that, I have to figure out how to power it. It's a JAMA board, so based on parts that came with this cab, it was wired for JAMA, and based on parts that I already had from other projects I've taken apart, I've started doing a little bit of planning. Now, the monitor that I have does not need an isolation transformer, but I have a couple, these big ones from a countertop, bar top. So I think I'm going to use one. The wood plate on the cocktail is much longer than an upright. This isn't even long enough, but it's the longest 3/4 inch piece of plywood I had in my garage. This particular transformer has the standard 2-pin monitor out. It also has wires that connected to a bridge rectifier and provided 12 volts to the Merit Pit Boss bar top game. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that. I don't know enough to know if I just use a couple of these wires, if I'll have 12 volts AC that I can run to the bulbs in the game, or if I should hook up that bridge rectifier in here and run 12 volts DC to the bulbs, or if I should run the bulbs off the switching power supply. I honestly have no idea what the best way to go is, what the pluses and minuses of any of those would be. So right now I've just got the wires from the bar top. This is how long they were, and it came with a large metal plate that had a power switch, a breaker switch, a line filter, let's see here. Yeah, on the power switch is, I'm guessing that's a varistor for surge protection. And then it went into this harness that goes into the transformer. And then, like I said, this went out to a monitor. It pigtails off. This goes to power a switcher. So, I mean, these wires are all way longer than they need to be, but technically I could just connect them all like that on this board, tidy it up a bit, and just, zip tie the extra length of the wires rather than cutting it. This is the connector that has, if I hook a bridge, or if I hook the bridge rectifier up to this, then this wire, this connector here, has green and black wires, which actually is providing 12 volts from the bridge rectifier. And where did it go? There's another connector, right here. This in the bar top went to an AC fan. So this is just an AC pass-through, which I could cut, unsolder, or just tie up, because I don't have anything else in the cocktail cabinet that needs AC power. And that would get me pretty much power into the game, power to the switcher, and then I just need to put in the switching, or the JAMA harness. So the JAMA harness I started working on, and sure enough, like this monitor, it has some wires. The control panel wires and the monitor signal wires are just like this. They have electrical tape where they were spliced together. So the JAMA harness, I took them apart, and like I thought, they stripped both ends of the wire, twisted them together, and put electrical tape on it, which I am not thrilled with. So this I haven't done yet, but I think I already mentioned. This is probably the original 4900 2-pin plug to provide power to the original monitor, and then these black and white wires are from this monitor chassis. I will be taking the electrical tape off and probably cutting the wires there, and then putting a 2-pin plug on there, crimping them on properly so there's no double-sided tape on that. And the other thing that I don't have with this cabinet is the power switch and the plate that it goes in. So if you look in the cab there, that's the hole where the power switch sticks out the bottom. Over there is the hole where the power cord comes in the bottom. So there are 4 holes over there for a plate, and I believe it's the same plate as an upright Joust and maybe other Williams cabinets. It's been so long since I've had a Williams cabinet. I don't see any wire harnesses for sale on eBay or Clove at the moment for Williams games, and if they were, they'd probably be really expensive. And I'm not sure if I want to buy one, since it won't be, I mean, the odds are astronomical that I'd find an actual Joust cocktail wiring harness, but the one thing I need is a power plate. So I figured, well, where can I get a piece of metal for the power plate? When I took the Merit countertop piece that I saved that has the power cord going in, which is why you see these 2 cut wires combined with this cut wire. These were the wires that came out of the actual power cord. So these I will be removing and soldering a new power cord to these parts when I get to that stage. But all of this stuff and a coin counter up to this connector here, that was all bolted onto a metal frame in the back of the Merit bar top that I removed. And this is where the power switch was. So there I had a piece of metal that has the perfect hole for this power switch, because that's where it was in the cabinet. So I used a Dremel with a cutoff wheel, and I cut this bit out of that metal bracket that goes, well, metal assembly that goes on the back of the countertop that holds all of this stuff. And then I marked and drilled holes that match the inside of the cabinet where bolts go to hold this plate into the cabinet. There is a slight kick up right here that I left on because it would have been a pain in the neck to grind that down, and it doesn't matter as long as the plate is flat. So this side will be facing up, that has this little lip on it. It won't interfere with anything, and it just saves me a bunch of grinding to get that flat. I had to do a little bit here to get this area flat here, and I didn't want to do even more grinding up there. So anyway, there you go. There's a plate that should bolt in to the factory hole locations. There were several original screws left in the cab that were holding the JAMA wiring harness in place, so I'm pretty sure that these are the exact same screws that were used originally to hold this in, going by my pictures of my previous Joust cocktail. It did use bolts with the same head on them, so of course this is not the original plate. It's got a little half hole cut out because the assembly that I cut it out of had a hole right there on the edge there, and like I said, this part's lifted up, and this isn't on the Joust cocktail and other Williams games. This is just like zinc coated metal, not black painted, so you know, again, it's not going to be 100% true representation of what was there. It's just something that cost me some time with the Dremel and wearing out half of a fiberglass Dremel cutting wheel to cut this thing apart, instead of buying an entire wiring harness just to get this switch, or putting a wanted ad on the forums, just seeing if anybody would sell me just the power switch plate and switch. Instead, I already had this stuff, so let's just repurpose it. You can see up here, there's another filter from another project a long time ago I took apart. I was going to use that until I realized, wait a minute, I've already got a thing with a switch and a line filter. I will remove this breaker. I think it's 2 amp. It's marked there 2A. So I will take this, unsolder it, and solder new lines onto it that go to probably a fuse holder here with like a 3 amp fuse instead of this 2 amp breaker deal. But yeah, that should get me a block that, I didn't do that today. I should have done that when I had the drill out. This mark, and mark over there match up with original holes in the base of the cabinet that the original wood plate were mounted to. So it was mounted, the original plate, with those 3 screws and then another couple about here and here. So I could have taken this plate, moved it up so that I had 4 screws in the corners holding this to the bottom of the cabinet, but I wanted this transformer as far into the corners I could get it, because the monitor comes down and I didn't want this anywhere where it's gonna have the possibility of coming in contact with the monitor, which would be, I don't know, somewhere around here-ish, the neck board of the monitor. So I wanted that in the corner. So yeah, that's current progress, a little bit at a time here, because I've got so many projects. I'm honestly not sure whether I'm going to paint this or not. You know, it's not going to get any moisture in my house, but eventually it will rust. But this actual piece of metal, I can see a little bit of bubbling in the paint over here. So, do I want to go to the trouble of sanding this thing down and painting it when it's not an original piece? I'm thinking not. Again, if this gets sold to somebody, or I decide to do a full-on 100% original restore, this will be replaced with a real plate, and this one will be taken off. And so I'm not too worried that a little bit of the bottom here that's touching the cabinet might rust a little bit. It's not going to hurt anything any more than it's already hurt in there with all of the stains from the spilled liquids in there. So that's the status of that. The control panels, I still don't know what I'm going to do. Rich from This Old Games sells custom order. I don't know if anybody has ever ordered those. I'd love to hear how the quality was. I got these, 10 years ago, I got replacements from Quarter Arcade, which I believe were made by Phoenix Arcade, but those are long since sold out. So what I've done here is I took the Nintendo sticks out and I put some Japanese Sanwa sticks in. Original yellow buttons. On the yellow side, the color is, it's okay. I mean, this is a bit darker than that, but try finding original Joust cocktail joysticks. This side, this is the lightest blue ball top I have. These are the incorrect color buttons, but I don't have light blue. I only have these dark blue ones on hand, but they actually kind of match this a little bit. So again, this is not adding any holes to what was already here. The Nintendo sticks used the same mounting plate as these Japanese sticks that I had. So they also have replaceable restrictors. I believe I've got octagonal 8-ways in there now. I might have 4-ways. They might even sell 2-ways, I'm not sure. But it was just a way to get away from the Nintendo sticks that were originally in here. And the shafts are really close to the plexiglass. So just today, my order arrived. I have some 15mm extensions that you add to the shaft to raise it up a little bit, and that 15mm I think will be just enough for them to be a bit more comfortable than this, where your fingers are, rubbing up against the dust washer there and the plexiglass because it's so close to the panel. Speaking of, JAMA harness, there's JAMA harness. These are Nintendo control panel harnesses, a right and a left. That again, every wire was cut, stripped, twisted, and electrical taped to this JAMA harness. So I've undone all that. The only thing left that's taped is this original Williams video cable. They did the same thing with the electrical tape to it. I don't know why they didn't just put connectors on the JAMA harness cable, unless they didn't have any connectors, and this was the cheapest, easiest thing they could do. But that's the only place that has tape left. And here's the Nintendo joysticks that I do not need. I will probably try and sell on cloth. I thought they were trashed when I got the cabinet. They were so nasty. So I went online and looked at can you clean Nintendo joysticks and found videos. Tip of the hat to, I believe it was Canadian Arcade, whose video I followed to clean these. I did some CLR for the bases. Everything else, except the switches, was cleaned in simple green. Removed the grease. This flared area of the top plate is flared on the bottom also, and there's a bearing in there with a hole that the shaft goes through, and that's what makes the ball top swivel. And then there's a spring and a retainer in there. I took everything apart, cleaned it. It was absolutely filthy. Removed all the grease, put it back together, and pretty good. I did not re-grease it because I don't have white silicone grease. This one's a little bit jerky. But again, neither of these have any grease in them because I don't have white lithium grease, and thought if I sell these, whoever buys them might have their own grease they want to put in there. If they don't like white lithium, if they like something else, then they wouldn't have to wipe off what I put in there. Just take the joystick out and put whatever you want in there. I did not buy any replacement parts, so it's all original parts. These are the collars, rubber collars that go under the ball top on the shaft. I took them off and didn't put them back on because they are so yellow and nasty. They're supposed to be clear. This, I don't know if this is from Nintendo or something else. This dust washer, it's got a cigarette melt on it. The other one was definitely not from a Nintendo. So there's that. And then I had the 3 button holders. I didn't clean these. I just took them off the machine. So yeah, I might try seeing if I can sell that as a lot on cloth. One ball top smaller than the other. They are screw-on with a set screw to hold them in place. There's the set screw on that one. So there we go. So that came from the conversion. And then that switcher came from the conversion. And in the back room there is um, the Nintendo transformer that came with the conversion hooked up to the monitor. So again, whew, a lot of work to do. You know, I'm really OCD, I guess. I would like to use original wire colors to fix this wiring. These are the only two wires that went to the JAMA harness, so they must have gone to start. The other ends are just sitting in here loose. So I don't know if the game was on free play and you just short them together to start the game, because yeah, none of the other wires, they're all cut for the original start switches, and there was a plate over the front of this, so you wouldn't be able to use the original start switches anyway. So I don't know how they credited this up and started games, but you can see the specific Williams wire colors. There's like a yellow and a white with yellow, or yellow with white for the bulbs. The ground, this one is not an original ground wire. The original ground wire is black with some red stripes. And then there's orange with a stripe, and another orange with a stripe for player 1 and player 2 start. And I'm like, oh dang, do I have those? And I look through all my stuff, and no, I don't have the original color wires in my scrap wire from harnesses I've taken out of other conversions that I've fixed up or had. So thinking I might just not care about that and just solder new wires on to connect to the JAMA harness and get it up and running. Down there again, that's the wires to the speakers. That I left those in there because I wasn't sure how much of that was original wiring. And it turns out there is the black with the red stripe ground wire. There's a red with a black stripe for the speakers. And they have those little connectors on the end of the speakers. So what I could do is just pop those connectors off the speakers, and then I could use this on the coin door if I really wanted to keep it original wire color. There's plenty enough of the black with the red stripe to run the couple missing ground wires from the coin door out to about here to put a connector on that would connect up with a JAMA harness or an original Joust cocktail. So, God, video too long again. But there you go. There is the current status with the next phase. Yeah, trying to work on the power board, get things mounted in there. Oh, forgot, I can't put the power board in yet. If you can see right there, 2 rusty nails. Those are in all 4 corners. And there's one in the coin door area, which I don't know if you're going to be able to see because it's dark in there. There they are. There are 5 blocks that are supposed to be on the bottom of this cabinet with furniture type adjustable leg levelers. So not like arcade machine leg levelers that are what? 1.5 inches, 1 3/4, 2 inches in diameter. They're just small metal adjustable leg levelers like you would find on furniture. And yeah, there's one here, and then one in each of the 4 corners of the cocktail to keep the edges off the ground so that they don't get touching any moisture, which will soak up into the wood. My previous cocktail, one of them was missing and one was really loose, so I reproduced 2 of them. This one, they're all missing, but all those rusty nails are there, so I pounded the nails from the bottom of the cab back up. So now I need to make 5 reproduction wooden blocks, which originally were 1 inch thick plywood, 2x2 square, with a 1/2 inch plywood 2x2 square on top of it, with a T-nut mounted in the back side of the 1/2 inch plywood, so it ends up getting sandwiched in between the 2 blocks, which holds the T-nut in place, and then the leg leveler goes down through the center of the blocks And you can see there's a large hole there that the leg leveler originally would have poked up. The leg levelers I found 10 years ago, I couldn't find ones that were the same brand that were originally used. I got the name off of one of them. It was like printed on one of the original leg levelers, and I couldn't find those anymore, so I got the closest thing, and they worked on my 10-year-old restoration or reconstruction, whatever you want to call it. So I didn't use 1-inch thick plywood because I didn't have any 1-inch thick plywood. So I have that same decision to make now. I don't have any 1/2 inch either. I just have some scraps at 3/4 inch. And I'd like to keep it at least original to the 1-inch piece and a 1/2 inch piece. So I might look for scrap wood at a local place. I think there's some places that sell scrap pieces of wood from their cuttings. So I might try and do that. And I really should do that first because, like I said, the one that's in this corner is interfering with where this corner of this power brick is going to go. So this brick can't go in the cabinet until I replace those feet or at least pound those nails back down, because this goes right on top of where those nails originally were, which is a good point. I just only now realized that means that if the leg leveler goes up so far that it goes poking into the cabinet, I might have to drill a hole in there in the right place for it to poke out. Although I think the leg levelers that I found at the local hardware store were not as long as the originals, so I don't think there's any chance that they're going to go through this into the top, because that's a 1-inch thick plywood base, so they'd have to be 1-inch thick, plus they go through another 1-inch thick block, and then another 1/2 inch block. So 2.5 inch, they'd have to be, yeah, I don't think that's going to be a problem. But just another thing you find as you're working on games. So, video's way too long, apologies for that, but I have made a bit of progress on several different things and have made some temporary decisions. I'm not saying it's going to stay like this, but again, I'd like to know if anybody bought the reproductions from Rich at This Old Game for the Joust cocktail. The original joystick bases, that's a long story that I don't want to go into right now, other than to say I used to have 8 extra pairs and I sold them, and so now I don't have any. And the blue and yellow ball tops have never, as far as I know, been reproduced. So there are some people who have talked about the possibility of just getting the dimensions and taking them to a shop that can mill them, the upright shafts, down, because the cocktail shafts are shorter than the upright. So if you start with an upright shaft and you have the means and the measurements, you should be able to reduce the diameter of that shaft to match a cocktail shaft, but it would be kind of a pain in the neck, but it could be done. So there we go. Stopping the video now before I think of something else to talk about.